Kia ora koutou, Markie here. Markie the Demystifier, and this video is about demystifying mindfulness. And I think it needs a lot of demystifying, so it might be quite a long video. This one might go into a few parts, especially as I'm losing my voice. Now, I did a video back along called something along the lines of why clinicians should not recommend mindfulness to their clients, which is a very provocative, deliberately provocative title, and it might give the impression that I'm anti-mindfulness, whereas actually I'm very pro-mindfulness, but I don't like the way people often approach it, because I think it's often misleading, and ultimately that can then be harmful to people, because people have try and approach mindfulness, try and do mindfulness exercises, then they kind of get confused, don't get maybe the outcomes that they're expecting, because they shouldn't be expecting any outcomes, but we'll get into that in a moment, and then they feel that they somehow kind of failed and feel worse about themselves. So I don't think it's to be fucked around with, if you'll excuse my French. You know, it's something to be done properly, and it's incredibly simple. It's an incredibly simple thing, mindfulness, which is why I think people confuse it so much. And it's like somebody's, people have done, I think Ruby Wax has done she's done a Master of Science, and she's done an MSc in mindfulness. It's like, how can you do an MSc in mindfulness? I really don't know. I mean, there's a lot of neuroscience with it, so I guess, if you look into that, then it would justify an MSc. But other than that, mindfulness is really simple. So, the thing is, most people confuse mindfulness with other things, and they have expectations around it which are unhelpful. So what is mindfulness? So mindfulness comes from Buddhist practices, but don't panic if you're a fundamentalist Christian and you eye other religions with some suspicion. It's a psychological process. It's a brain-mind thing. It's the principles behind mindfulness in any kind of spiritual tradition are that it will make your mind still. We'll get into the detail of that in a bit, because it's a bit more nuanced than that. And that if you are following some kind of spiritual path, then it will enable you to connect on a spiritual level. So if you're a fundamentalist Christian, rather than having this crazy belief that a lot of people still trot out, that mindfulness is about making your mind go blank, and if you make your mind go blank, a demon can kind of pop in the empty space and possess you, which is utter bollocks. Okay, and whatever spiritual path you're following, and particularly Christianity, and if you think about some of the early Christian the early Christians, a lot of them went out into the desert, and what did Jesus do for 40 days and 40 nights when he went into the wilderness? What mindfulness does is it kind of helps you see past all the rubbish that goes through your head that makes it impossible for you to connect with life, with yourself, and if you have a spiritual belief, with God. Okay, so and likewise atheists panic sometimes if you mention anything spiritual, so you don't have to have any spirituality or spiritual belief to practice mindfulness. It's the name would suggest, it's a mind thing, and it's all about your approach to it, really. Many people, myself included, would say that mindfulness will deepen your spirituality, but if you don't have any spiritual beliefs, you'll just get the same experience, but you'll just frame it in a different way. You might say that you feel more in closer connection with yourself, or more self-aware, or more calm, or more peaceful. Peace is something that can be interpreted as a spiritual thing, or it could be seen as something that's not got anything to do with spirituality. So don't sweat about this stuff, okay? People kind of just make things hard. It's a very simple thing. So it comes from the Buddhist tradition. They tend to call it a vipassana, or certainly in some traditions of Buddhism they call it vipassana. And then it got very popular, over the last 20, 30 years, and the NHS, for example, has started to investigate its use for a number of different health conditions. So I am going to pause there, and we'll go into part 2, and we'll talk some more about mindful. I think this is going to be a long one, but it's going to be a good one. So stay with me, stay mindful, and we'll catch you soon. Rangimarie.